Hey guys, welcome to this video. So boy, do we have a treat for you today. So I've got Jason Newman here with me. And for those of you who don't know Jason, Jason joined my program about a year and 3 months ago, if I have that right. And as of 3 months ago, he decided to quit his job as a high-paying salesperson to come work with a team to help grow our business, to really help spread the word of this program. And I know what some of you may think here. This is someone who works with me, and there might be some conflict of interest behind this conversation we're about to have. I just want to assure you here, if you want to see some proof or some evidence that Jason is a real person who actually took the program, who have gone through the ringer, as you're about to hear here, and have established himself as really the beacon of positivity, of inspiration for hundreds of people in the program so far, just let me know. Just email me and I'll send you a bunch of proof, because I don't want you to miss anything in this interview. This is going to be a very powerful interview. He's going to have an incredible story to tell, and I want to make sure that you don't get lost in the politics of this and really see the story for what it is. I wanted to show you his story because his story is one of the most amazing stories in the program so far, and it just shows here that it doesn't matter how hopeless your situation is. If you follow the process to really become the best version of yourself, you become quite irreplaceable. You become quite irresistible. And so there's a lot of people out there who are focusing so much on the marketing side of things, on like, what do I do? What do I say? But they're not really focusing on the internal shifts that they need to focus on. But Jason here, and then we're going to talk about this in depth, really focus on that internal shifts. And once you focus on a product like that, it takes care of the marketing. And you'll see his story here. If you focus on the internal shifts, that's all that matters. And sorry in advance for my audio here. I'm on a trip right now, and I realized that I forgot to bring the cable to my microphone. So sorry for the audio quality, but I hope you don't get lost in the audio quality and really listen to Jason's story here. So Jason, I guess I want to start here by letting you kind of introduce yourself. And I want you to start by describing to us what it was like when you found me. What was your relationship like? And what have you tried at that point in time to try to fix things, I guess?
Oh, wow. Well, when I found you, Jeff, I was a bit lost. I was confused, to say the least. It was hopeless. The relationship with my wife and I at the time was over. There was no hope. There was no possible reconciliation. And when I found you,
is that what she said to you? Like, what did she say to you? When was it the moment when your wife left and you found out that this was heading towards divorce? How did she break it to you? Was it shocking for you? Were you expecting it at all? What did she say to you?
No, things have been pretty rough for many years, but she broke the news through a text, and probably because she was afraid to have the conversation. She had been holding on to these feelings for quite a while. And her words were, "How long are we going to keep up this charade?" And I thought to myself, I said, yeah, this was a charade. We were roommates at best, parents at the highest, but there was no hope for her. I know we see a lot of things as like, does your partner have hope? She was just done. There was no hope in her at all. There was nothing left. She just was over it. After 12 years, the hope was gone. She was just ready to move on.
What was the indicators that you got that made you think, yeah, the hope is pretty much gone here? Like, she has no hope.
Oh, wow. The words she used, the emotions that she displayed, it seemed like it didn't matter. The decision was made years ago. The choice of words she used, that why were we pretending for this long? Why? Her question was, is why didn't I see the writing on the wall? Knowing how bad it was. And she was surprised that I even still cared.
Yeah, and I'm guessing if you follow a lot of the stories of a lot of people too, it's probably when you realize too that you're trying to fix the relationship, you're trying to have these conversations, and she's kind of indifferent about it. She's kind of like, I don't really want to talk about it. I don't really want to discuss it. I don't see any point in this. She maybe gets upset whenever you try to bring up conversations, gets impatient, just skirts you every step of the way. And the first thing you think is, okay, if I can't even talk to her, how am I supposed to fix this, right? That's probably what happened to you as well.
For sure. No, that was basically the outline of the entire relationship is, really avoiding everything. Like it seemed like there was so many problems and they begin to mount. And then you ask yourself, like, where do you even begin? And so naturally, I think, at least for me and her, naturally, we avoided it. And these problems just begin to mount. And when you take a step back and look at them, you're like, where do we even go?
Yeah.
It's so daunting.
Yeah.
Like if we can't even talk about them, how will we ever resolve any issue? If we can't even bring them up, at least have a conversation about them. So we naturally just swept them under the rug.
Yeah. And feel free to answer this however you want, but at one point, there were other people in the picture in the relationship, yeah?
Yes, there was someone else involved, yeah.
Yeah. Did you find that out in the beginning of your journey when she broke the news of like how long did we continue the charade, or was this like a development that happened later on?
No, it was in the beginning. And to be fair, in the mind of her, this was over years ago,
Yeah.
I know to a lot of people, it looks like, maybe she walked out, but when I look back at it now, and when she looks at it, I had walked out years ago from not even trying. I did that myself. And so to everyone else that's out there looking, it looks like, like she's calling it quits. But in truth, I had called it quits years ago.
Yeah. I mean, principally speaking, right? People get so stuck on this word of having an affair or seeing someone else. But, when we enroll all our clients, they eventually realize that, okay, if you really look at your own behaviors too, and the fact that you checked out, that you didn't care as well, that's, you can argue semantics all you want, but that's just as bad, where you gave up on the relationship, right? You betrayed the relationship yourself already. You didn't have an affair, but you definitely did betray it in so many other ways as well. So let's get out of the semantics. Let's look at the principles and look at what can we actually do? What was our role in this as well? What was our 100% contribution to the 50%? I guess.
Right. Yeah, you got it. So it's like, where did I play a role in that? And, at first, like you tell yourself, like, you start to try to, victimize a bit, and feel bad for yourself. But then when you just take a step back and you're like you said, it's like, where was my role in this? And I look back and I'm like, I'd walked out on this woman years ago, and she gave me so many opportunities, and I avoided them until they caught up with me. And so you can't blame anything after that,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it takes real strength to admit that. I think I think it's so hard for people. Even sometimes I get like one or two people in the program who just say, how can you accept an affair? Like, you have to be a man. You have to be like a hard person. You have to be strong. But it's like, do you realize that you not being able to confront your own mistakes, your own shortcomings, is weakness in itself? Is it bred out of insecurity? It takes a stronger person to look within himself to say, here's what I did. Here's my role in this. So, I think there's a lot of misconceptions of what power and strength means in relationships too. And I'm sure we talk about that deeper as we go on. But So paint this picture again, right? Your partner is in a position where she wants to get out. She's hopeless, doesn't want to talk about the relationship, doesn't want to talk about reconciling, doesn't want to try reconciling, has other people in the picture. How hopeless did you feel yourself?
Wow. With talking about some of those things, you reflect back and like, yeah, I knew that it was me that had so much to work on. There was no blame at that point. I'd kind of self-reflected. It was like, yeah, you created this.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, I was like, how do you get out of it? You know, how do
Which
you?
is good because you looked within pretty early on in the journey. So like,
Yeah.
You saw this affair. Yeah, there was a moment when you tried to play the victim and you blamed her and said, "This is unforgivable. How could you do this to me?" But then quickly you went inwards and said, "Okay, what can I do? Or what can I control? What can I fix about myself?"
Correct.
And I believe you actually joined 2 other programs before joining mine. Yeah, which programs were they? Just
well, it was the Modern Man and X Back Again were the 2 programs. And, you know, just a brief about those. One was more or less 7-minute videos chained together of how to be a pickup artist to be a high value man. And the other program was more of a, you know, therapy session where it's a sounding board where it's, yeah, we'll listen to you, we'll diagnose your problems, but there's no treatment involved there. And yeah, it's not what I was expecting at all, you know?
Yeah. And you found me on YouTube.
Yes, I did.
It always makes me laugh. It always makes me laugh.
So like,
tell me again.
I've said it before. So the first time,
thoughts when you found me, yeah.
Yeah, I think early on in the journey, the YouTube algorithm put a video up, and I forget which one it was about, but I ended up watching. And I was like, okay. And I see the same things everybody else does. We don't see the wedding band. At that time, it had 9,000 subscribers. You know, I said, well, what does this young Asian guy know about relationships? And so I avoided it, and I went for the more people with more subscribers. You know, I went with the more clicks and the more viewed videos, and I went down that chain. And I tried those programs, the first one for about a month, and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And I tried the second one for roughly about 2 months, and I felt that it was going good. They give you the whole, you know, smart contact and, you know, no contact, and try to play that card. And there was a part of me that felt fake. I had been.
Was this Marriage Helper?
No, this was X Back Again. Okay. And so she advised me to really distance myself. You know, I think the words that the coach had told me, she can't have her cake and eat it too. And for me, it was so tough because I was so disconnected in the marriage for so long. And I'm like, well, here she is trying to reach out to me, and you're telling me no, you know. And I remember that conversation. I said, well, you got to swear to me that this is the right thing. And something in me just didn't feel right. So fast forward a month into doing that, it was a trigger that happened, and I lost my cool again. And so here I am. I'm like, man, I've been doing this lighthearted, willpower, humor way to kind of calm my anger, and I lost my cool again. And I was fortunate enough that there was no one at home during this time. And it was that moment, you know, after I was able to come to my senses, that I said there had to be something else. There had to be more. And it was a single comment on Clay Andrews' page that led me to you again. I said, well, here's this guy, you know, and end up binge watching the videos for the weekend and signed up to the master class and got accepted in the program. And it's been the greatest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. So I guess tell me so we painted a picture of what that relationship was like back then. What is it like now?
It's great. You know, we're able to have conversations now, you know, and just kind of backtrack a little bit to kind of where my mindset was is, you know, I've been fairly successful in my life. And growing up, I thought that's kind of what a man's role was, to be a good father, good protector, and good provider. But what I've learned to realize is I was really neglecting all the higher level needs and really catering to the low level needs here. And so now I place importance on conversation and listening and being present and all that. And I'm able to show up in these moments, and we're able to have these long, deep, meaningful conversations. You know, it's not about the house, it's not about the cars, and it's not about sharing a kid together, but it's about the conversations that you connect with, a 2-hour conversation at dinner or a 3-hour conversation on the porch, where it's just, you're able to do that. And I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to push through and have that opportunity to have those conversations with her again. And we enjoy spending time with each other.
And just to clarify, the higher level value that you're talking about versus the lower level, we're really talking about just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's a lot of men think that, oh, I need to do more chores around the house, help around the house. I need to be the problem solver. I need to be the financial provider. I need to be the protector, the provider of, logical and logistical security.
Sure.
But, we live in a world now where women can get all that stuff themselves. Maybe sometimes even better than you as a man, right? And it's okay. And so as a man and as a person in a relationship, we have to seek more than just like being a financial provider. And what you're talking about is, again, like the pillars that we talked about, like creating emotional safety, creating admiration, creating goal alignment, creating that passion, creating that longer lasting principles in a relationship that makes it quite irreplaceable in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to expand on that fact, we were talking about the lower level, is, you even have outside people, friends and family. It's like, well, you are a good man. You provided all this thing. And I'm like, no, once you learn, what it really takes to cultivate and create a healthy relationship, you start to look back and you're like, I did none of this. I provided this low level stuff. And to expand on what you're saying is, she did all that. She has a beautiful home and a beautiful vehicle and, a career, and, she don't need me for nothing, and I think it was caught up in that, this is what I can provide, so she'll always need me, until that one day and they don't need you.
Yeah. And I think the question that I think a lot of people have right now is, okay, what happened to the guy she was having an affair with? Like, what happened to him? Did you talk her out of it? Like, what was that journey like for you?
No, in the process of that, like what we going back to what we had talked about earlier, is like, that's not about me. That's, she didn't leave me for him. She left me because I didn't provide her with those needs and even care to even work on it. And so that's the same approach I had to take, is like, it doesn't matter, what she's doing, what he's doing. I had to work on myself. And going back to the kind of the beginning is, I was pretty hopeless and lost and didn't really see that I would have a chance. But all I could do
the hopeless part, sorry to cut you off here, but I think the hopeless part that you were referring to, and I'm very invested in your story, and I follow your story for over a year now, was that, obviously we destroyed this relationship, and that got her to start seeking out others. And I think the problem that you had, and I think the problem that a lot of people had as well, is that this other person has the advantage of being able to create so much novelty, so much passion. Like, this guy has the honeymoon phase in his court, in his favor, but you don't. You have a ton of baggage. You tend to have a ton of bad memories and bad conditioning on your side. And so you're thinking, okay, I'm trying to get this relationship back, but I can't just be 10% better than this guy. I need to be like 100, 200%, because this needs to battle all that disadvantage that I'm facing. And so I think when you say this feels really hopeless, that's what you're referring to, part of it, at least.
No, you're exactly right. when you start reflecting back on yourself and you're seeing 12 years of baggage and, lack of effort, it feels like a weight on your shoulders to where you're like, man, if I'm going to do something, I'm already in a down position. I better do something quick. There's no time to really waste. And like you said, I better be a 10 times or a 20x times version of whoever I was before to even have an opportunity. And, pushing past all the resistance along the way and not giving any glimmer of hope ever throughout the entire process. Yeah.
Yeah. Meaning like no glimmer of hope, as in no sense that your old self was, any part of your old self was there. It's just focused on showing her your new self every single day, day in, day out, through the subtle micro expressions, subtle microtones that you have. It's just giving that old self that you had, the old confirmation bias she has about you, just zero oxygen, just starve that thing to death in a way and replace it with a new self. And I think a lot of people might be wondering too, and I think this is something that people struggle to understand a lot, is when I say, okay, don't focus on the marketing side. Don't focus on what to do, what to say. Focus on your internal shifts first. And they struggle to make this connection of, okay, how does that help get my partner back? If she doesn't see it, if I can't even market it, if I can't even talk about it, then how will she see it? And I think looking at your story, starting out in a position where your partner didn't even want to see your changes, didn't want to talk to you about your changes, didn't want to talk to you about reconciling. How did that process of her finding out and feeling your changes even come about for you?
What I think we alluded to at the beginning is, for me, I started very quickly on working on internally. And it was more or less not a goal to market to her. It's just, I realized if I ever stood a chance that I would have had to be different. I would have to leave that old person, that old man, and be different. And so when I did this, I naturally started interacting with people in a different way, our daughter, our friends and family. And, over time, she began to take a look. And even through all the resistance that I've found through external, through other people, herself, I didn't let that faze me. I defined who I was going to be and the man I was going to be. And I waited for them to catch up.
Yeah. And I think the important part to understand also is, a lot of people, when they focus too much on the marketing side, on the what to do, what to say, what they don't realize is that, you could learn a script about how to say something, what to say, but the script is literally 0.0000001% of what you're communicating out there to the world. All the stuff that are the 99.9999% is your subtle micro expressions, your microtones, your subconscious way of how you present yourself, your posture, the choice of words you choose to say, the tone of voice you choose to say it with. I mean, there's so many things that are subconscious that most people don't realize. And if you just focus on what to do, what to say, you're just really focusing on the 0.0001%. But the difference that we try to have, and I think this is the biggest difference for you, and you correct me if I'm wrong, right? It's really about making this internal shift into something that's more of an identity-based changes, and something that's more of your new programming, not something you're trying to fake. And so when you talked about your partner just naturally feeling and seeing your changes, this is done transitively, right? About how you handle moments with your friends when kind of crap hits the fan. How are you handling conflicts? Whenever you have the smallest interaction with her, how is your presence? How is your body language? And all those things add up into something massive. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is like, you have to understand the stuff that you can't pinpoint. You have to master the stuff you can't touch, right? And the things you can't touch are always the internal stuff that a lot of people don't really appreciate. But the very fact that they don't appreciate it is the reason why they stay stuck in that cycle and why their partner cannot feel their changes, right?
Right. No, I think once you lose the notion of, like, as you mentioned, the scripts and all the things that what society tells us to do, once you lose that notion and you start focusing on actually being instead of appearing, then that really takes the rush, that takes the urgency out. It takes the marketing side out of it. It takes all that, just because I am who I am today and I'm going to be who that person tomorrow. And the next day, you focus on being and not appearing, and the rest just kind of, people will catch up to you.
Yeah. Tell me more about, so when you started to show these changes, did you have to force your partner to like stop seeing this other guy, or did that just come naturally? And what was that progression from her side and from your point of view look like and feel like?
Without really, again, I don't focus, my focus wasn't on that. And again, for her, her focus was, at the end of the day, I think they're naturally going to gravitate towards the person that's going to make them feel the happiest. And I always told myself, I said, if I could be that guy, well, then she'll gravitate towards me. And so instead of my focus being on, other things that I can't control, if I just solely focus on the things that I can control, then the rest will work itself out.
And so just to clarify for people, and Jason, feel free to be open with us, right? Feel free to be transparent, because you have a good story and I want you to share it. So please do share it. But if I understand you correctly, based on what you told me, it's that she decided one day, hey, I'm going to end this relationship with this other guy because this is a relationship that I really want to nurture, the relationship with you in this case. And it was hard for her, but that was the call she made. And you didn't have to force that on her. She just made that on her own through just feeling and seeing and really recognizing that, man, this guy, I can't even recognize this guy right now. And I think the other thing that you told me that was also very interesting was how invested she is now in the program as well, and the things you're learning in the program, and the mindset shifts and the internal shifts, the identity shifts as well.
For sure.
Tell us more about that.
And that's huge. In what you had mentioned before is about the transitive properties, and that showed up with our 5-year-old, in the way she responds to me. And so naturally, my partner wants this, she sees this and the way she responds, and she's naturally, she's thinking there's something to this, I can see it working. And you also see that, some of her guard and defenses have came down and gravitated towards a lot of the concepts that we use right here in the program. We talk about it pretty regularly, and she's pretty far along with a lot of the things that we, with bulletproof vest and the frameworks, and we use them on each other. And more importantly, we're focusing on providing our daughter, our 5-year-old, with that safety, which has been huge for us.
Good. So this is really a multi-generational thing now, where these principles first help you save your relationship, but then afterward, this is more than that. This is more like, how can we teach this family and as many people as we can to really become the best humans possible?
That's exactly right. And again, this is just this doesn't happen with scripts or, trying to learn, certain words or tactics. You have to become and focus on not appearing. So, when we are these people and we're showing up for our little girl like this, you stay consistent. And I think that's the most important part in all of this, because yeah, we can learn this and we can learn this tactic, but there's no consistency there. And so when we show up and provide the safety, to our daughter, and I think that's crucial. And she's fortunate enough to have two parents that focus on this. I look back and I smile. A lot of people look back and say, okay, well, we're living in separate homes and the marriage and all that, and thinking about the child. But I sit back and I smile and I'm like, look, this child is fortunate enough to do this, and she's going to learn these skills along the way in her life as well.
Yeah, it's funny. This is something I noticed too with a lot of the clients that we enroll. Um, it's, when they first join, their highest goal is to save this relationship. That's their highest goal. But then when they learn the depth of the program and they learn like what we're actually learning in the program, they start to see a higher goal, which is now, how can I become the best version of myself? And how can I break this generational curse that is, my dad was toxic, for example, and my great grandparents were toxic. That made me toxic in a very subconscious way. And I wanted to break the generational curse.
Right.
And so now we have a higher goal to where now this is about becoming the best self, becoming self-actualized, allowing other people to be self-actualized. And the goal, the outcome of getting the relationship back almost becomes like, yeah, that's expected. Like if you get there, duh.
Right.
And so it doesn't become your highest goal anymore. It just becomes like a natural artifact, like a side effect almost that you either enjoy or you can enjoy, right? It's very fascinating to me how that level opens up to people once you look at and focus on the internal shifts.
And having gone through it, like, you normally don't start out that way. You realize early on, in order to become this and to achieve these things, my focus has to be on these higher mountains, and not just here, because, when you start out, your motivation is solely, like you had mentioned, just like, I got to get this back, but when you start to make that shift of saying, hey, there's more important things out there, there's more importance. If I become this person, then, as you say, like, yeah, that just becomes a secondary thing. I'm going to get a good relationship, whether it be with my wife or someone else. It's going to happen, and I won't make these same mistakes going forward.
Yeah, and ironically, and you see so many members in the program as well kind of go through this. This is what we call untethering. And the funny part is, as long as you have this very strong desire inside you to want to save this relationship, to want to get your partner back, then nothing you do can ever seem genuine.
Right.
And part of the allowing your partner to feel your changes, and I think the big turning point for you was being able to see finally that once I let go of this and I focus on the higher goal and I change myself and I fix myself and I grow myself for the sake of growing myself and I enjoy that process, not to get an outcome, that's when everything you do became genuine. And I think, tell me how that changed your course of your journey as well.
No, you're exactly right. It's that very notion of, I got to save this relationship, really, that holds you back. It's that very thought of, I got to do whatever it is to get this one relationship. But once you start focusing on yourself and in growing yourself in the right ways, you'll just naturally show up. And, give you an example of what she said the other day, like a couple of weeks ago. She said, like, you'll be happy with or without me. And I was like, yeah, I will. You start, my happiness is not dictated on the relationship. It doesn't rely on that. When you build your happiness, from within, then yeah, these things are just naturally going to gravitate towards you. People want to do that. But if my motivation was solely on the relationship and how to get my wife back, I would have given up a long time ago, because there was no hope given. There was no hope given at all, So again, and as you mentioned, untethering, and that's the most crucial step in everything is really getting your motivation to focus on yourself, and then just let everything else run its course, run secondary.
Yeah, it's funny because, hearing the words like, hey, Jason, you'll be happy with or without me. A lot of people hear that and they take it as a bad thing. Like as if like, ooh, then if I'm not showing her that there's a reason why she should choose me, then that's a bad thing. But to us, like that's a wonderful thing. That really shows the genuineness of the depth of your changes, that she's not obligated and she doesn't need to feel this obligation to make you happy. Right. And nobody wants to go into a relationship where they feel obligated to make someone else happy.
Right.
They want someone else to be complete already. And I think that's why you're communicating to her, and that you're complete and that you can be complete with or without her. You're going to be the same. Your changes will remain with or without her. Your changes will remain permanently, whatever she does, regardless of what she does. And that's the powerful message you're giving. And that's a message you can only give through the subtle, through the moments, through what you do when things are hard, through what you do when you get curveballs, right? Because that's when your partner can really see it's so hard to fake your changes at that moment. And I think through the constant building up of this,
yeah,
that was massive. Yeah.
And what you talk about is being genuine, so when you're genuine in this way, then that adds impact to say, yeah, I could be happy with or without you, but I choose to want you, right? And so that adds a lot of impact to that. It adds meaning to it. It's not just, I want you for the sake of wanting you, or I want this back for the sake of, just not having to go through a divorce or not having to split up a home. No, I want you because I want you for all these reasons. And even though I have these other options, and it really, it makes a statement, when you're able to do that. Yeah.
Mm. So when you first joined this program, you mentioned earlier, sorry, I'm about to cough here. You mentioned earlier that this was, because in the other programs that you joined for like a month, and then you said, something feels wrong here. Well, what was different about this? Well, when you joined, what did you see? What did you feel that was different that made you go, let me double down on this one, and let me invest now a year and 3 months into this one program? And now you quit your job and as a high-paying salesperson to come work with us, which I don't think a lot of other businesses coaches can say that as a point of pride. And just so you know, for all the listeners here, every single one of my team members are my clients. I only hire my clients. What did you see? What did you feel in the program?
Well, you talk about the other programs in only a couple months is because that's kind of what the content was. You can just kind of blow through it, it's a bunch of chained 7-8 minute videos. So approaching your program, this program was really mind blowing, at the amount of content that was out there. Like I tell people, when I talk with them and I'll look at them and say, like, I play at a very high level. High enough to get offered to come work here. And I'm still learning, I still have a ton, and having been at this process for this long and then playing at such a high level, it's the amount of things that you're able to unlock here is really, it's exciting for one, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. When I first got on, it was a little bit daunting coming from these other two programs. I didn't know what to expect. And I'm like, wow. Like, and you start seeing all this, but once you start getting that, in the program, we'll call it like getting that flywheel moving. So once you start just making these small, subtle pushes, it begins to, your wheel begins spinning so fast that, a lot of people have asked me, it's like, okay, even members in the group and people I know personally, it's like, okay, well, how did you do that? What was your trick? What was the big push, and I said, it wasn't, it wasn't a single push. It was steady, small pushes each and every day that allowed the wheel to spin like this. And it's the little things that we learn in the program, that lead up to everything. But to be truthful with you, it was daunting to coming in how complex it is, because I think a lot of us that are even watching this enjoy the YouTube videos. And what you find in the program is like miles beyond, but I had to look at that as a good thing, because I spent all this money on these other programs. And as you mentioned, like, yeah, I'm done with them in a month, and I look back at the progress and I'm like, still the same reactive guy, still getting upset and angry and still haven't really solved the root issue here. But when you get into the program, you start realizing like, okay, well, and it starts to make a little bit more sense. And when you're able to put it all together, and that's when you're able to really get that wheel spinning. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the word daunting, because whenever I join my programs, whether in business or whatever it is, I feel the same dauntingness. And I used to dread it. I used to hate it. But I've come to understand this dauntingness at a different level. And you tell me if this is kind of what you feel as well, because this is a fascinating conversation. One of the biggest peeves I have, I think I'm pretty bulletproof, but one of the biggest pet peeves that I have is when people compare my program to either my YouTube videos to ask the question, well, how is your program different than the YouTube videos? Or if they compare this program, my program, to other programs, because it's just mind-blowing in miles beyond. And I think when people join the program, the dauntingness they feel is they get exposed to all these principles and all these teachings and all these paradigms, all these processes that they've never thought about, they've never been exposed to. And it finally shows them, at first they thought they were here and they thought they can grow to here. And this is the part they don't know. But now they're realizing, oh, I don't know a lot more than I thought I don't know.
Right.
And that's a daunting part. But if you see it that way, you also see it as these are the exact programs that I need, because these are the exact programs that will get me higher. And I think that's what you're saying when you say, at first it was daunting, but then I saw it as an opportunity for me to grow, because this showed me how much I don't know.
Right.
And so, for a lot of the people who are seeing this, there's a lot you guys don't know. And I get, as a business, we make enough money. And you know this, you have access to my finances, you know how much money we make. So this is not about the money for us. So whenever people kind of listen to what I'm saying, even now, and interpret this as, this is me being salesy, this is me being like pushy, this is me being sleazy, this is just me trying to like uptalk my program. Yes, I want to uptalk it because I want you to see just how much more you can grow. Right? I want you to see how this can change your life. And if you ask the question, for example, like if you think this program is just as good as the YouTube videos or as good as just any other programs you've taken, it makes me crumble inside, because all I think about is, if only you knew, if only you knew. Any words of advice for people who are in that space of like not being able to see the higher level changes, I guess?
Well, I think looking at it, like, be cautious of what we tune into, talking about the other content that's out there, and even going back to the part where I said I avoided you just because of certain things that I thought that should have when I'm looking for, a relationship help. And I naturally went with the masses, and I went to these higher things, but I would say be cautious of that, because all this same material, like if you just take your program, right, our program, and you just take it away and you look at everything else, it's just kind of, it's all the same, it's all that, high value man, go to the gym and say this, do this, get a new wardrobe stuff. And what we're alluding to is, it's deeper than that. If you really want to change, if you really want to, reach these dreams that you can only ever even, dream of, all these things you ever wanted to do, you're not going to get it with what everybody else is doing. So in order to, what I had to realize is, in order to get something I didn't have, I had to do something I have never done before. Right. And all this other stuff, like going to the gym and saying these things and new clothes, and like, I've done all that, and look where it got me. It got me nowhere. So the complexity of the program is really, I think, is really the strength of it, because you never cease to want to keep learning and growing. And, there's always something more.
Yeah. So summarize for us. I know this is hard because the program is so complex. There's so many things we discuss. I mean, there's 60+ hours in there. And I think in the new version that we're creating here, and you've seen this, it's going to be a lot more than that. It's going to be a lot deeper than that. But three things that, if let's say you are talking to someone who is facing kind of similar situations as you, where they're dealing with a partner who's feeling hopeless in the beginning, there's an affair going on where they're already checked out as this relationship, they're invested in another relationship. 3 pieces of advice.
I tell you what, I want to add one. I want to give you 4, right? Okay. So the first thing I would say is, your situation is not unique. there's many of you on looking right now and say, well, I can relate to a lot of these things, and we see it in the program. This is why we don't need a lot of context from people, because it's all these things are pretty atypical. The second thing is, I would say, and I don't know if you remember, I know you remember this, but the first time I ever got on the phone with you and you let me ramble on for my session, and in the last 30 seconds, you said, you want to know what I think? You said, I don't think you know shit, and I can't fill a cup that's already full. And I was thrown back by that. I was like, wow, I just paid this money. And then my first call with this guy, wow. And what I realized is you were 100% right. So I had to go back that night, the next couple of days, and really humble myself and really realize, like, I'm the one that created this, not you. You're the one who's got out of this and teaching other men and women how to. And you were 100% right. So I had the second thing would be humble. And then the third, what I started learning is as you start progressing and learning through this stuff, and you're like, oh, I've never done this before, right? Well, I've never done this. Like, this seems weird. Is really stop your limiting belief, right? I think that's so vital in there. It's just saying, okay, just because I haven't done this before doesn't mean I can't do this. It's stop the limiting belief. And then the last thing I would say on number 4 was just consistency, again, and you don't have to really focus on consistency as much if you become, so if you become and you don't have to appear, but staying consistent in everything you do and in this becoming person that you are, this becoming man. And then you do those 4 things. And I think that was probably the biggest thing for me is being humble, staying consistent, limiting belief, all that.
Yeah. I want to stress on that first point. And talking about how people's situations are not unique, right? Tell us more about that. Like, what's your current understanding of what that means? Because I think a lot of people have a hard time believing that. They look at their situation and they look at how hopeless things are for them. Yeah. And they look at the fact that they can't see a way out. They can't see a methodology. They can't see a direction forward on how this can have any hope. And this kind of connects with your point about limiting beliefs too, about they kind of define their limiting belief of what could be possible, what could happen, how deep their changes can go, etc. And they use that narrative to say, look, this might work for other situations, but this doesn't work for me because of all these things of why I thought it's not possible.
Right.
How has that philosophy changed for you from the beginning to where you are now?
I looked at it, and you're exactly right to expand on this, because, the clients that we talk about, everybody's story, they always, oh, no, not my partner. No, there's no hope, And then I'm able to reflect back on my story, and I'm like, I've been there before. Like, all these things, and this changes over time, where you think, you start to see, like, your story is this big, unique story to where you just dropped the ball and swept everything under the rug. And even in our case, we had a trauma in the family where there was a death involved, and depression and all these different things that were out there. And you're thinking, oh man, it seems so unique. But the more you look into it, you just realize that, there's other stories out there, there's other situations. And you had mentioned is the limiting belief, it keeps up these blinders and say, oh no, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. And I think that goes into the next point is that, if you're doing this to solely, if your motivation is solely to try to get that back, you're never going to get the success that you're really looking for. So it's hugely important.
Yeah. I know for me, from my own journey, what I realized very quickly too was whatever you're facing, right? Whatever challenges you're facing, whatever state of the relationship you're in, the goal is the same. Become so irreplaceable that she can't resist you, or people can't resist you. Become such a bright light that people come to you like moths to flames, right? Now, the question though is, what does it mean to better yourself? What does it mean to better yourself? this is another area where I think there's so many misconceptions around this. What it means to better yourself. A lot of people think, again, it's pies. Go to the gym, right? Intellectual stuff, emotional stuff is great. Before I kind of get into my take on this, what's your take? Like, how does that take of what it means to better yourself evolve from the beginning, when you first found me, to now? Your definition of what it means now. I don't know, this is a very tough question to answer because it's so multi-layered, but what's the key differences you think?
Going into this, like I had never picked up a book, I never did any type of growth as far as relationships or, and very little on the self-development area. So going into it, I had to learn so much. And I think the biggest thing for me is when you're approaching it, and this from the thing is I always looked at it as a destination. Like I would get to this point, right? I would get this growth and I'm here. But the biggest thing that I think I pulled away from this, the self-development portion of it is really that it's just a process each and every day. It's just a way of life. It's you wake up in the morning, you say, how can I be better than the next day? And some days I'm going to have wins and some days I'm going to have losses. But if I just keep going forward and keep trying to reiterate my approach and learn from my mistakes, and in the process of doing that, there's actually even things beyond the program that you can just keep this going, but the foundation of the learning principles contained, it just really unlocks that. And once you realize that there is no destination, that even when you get there, it's fleeting, that the journey to progress and become the better version of yourself is the enjoyment in and of itself.
Yeah. So curious. So for me, and I'm very transparent with you about what I'm working on internally as well, because I'm very vulnerable with you about my struggles and the levels of self-development that I'm working on. A big part of this is like, I think for me, as my business grows, I'm having to think about higher level problems that I've never thought before. And I'm worrying about the things that I've never worried before. For you right now, what's the key processes? What's the key self-improvement items that you're working on?
Currently, right now is always, I think the biggest thing that I try to keep in there is really loving the approach of reiterating everything, always looking at my hypothesis, antithesis, synthesis, and then reiterating thing. And I think that's the biggest thing, because that also tells me that I can fail and then do it all over again. And if my focus is on that and always looking for better ways, and it, like, I mean, we got to work through a lot of things that I'm not used to doing in this environment, working on board for you. So I'm always looking at stuff like, oh, I've never done that before. Oh, I've never even heard that term before. But just understanding the approach of constantly growing, constantly looking for ways to improvement is probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. And I think you hit it right on the nail of what it means to better yourself, right? A lot of people, especially when they subscribe to like the high value man thing, pies, whatever it is, they think they have to be this perfect product, right? They think bettering themselves is like, I have to be perfect in the way I present myself, in the way I show up, in the way I look, whatever it is. And they think all these superficial things are the things that matter, but your partner doesn't care about that. Your partner really cares more about, do you have the right process to get to the right product, to get to the perfect Jason? She knows you will never get there. But this is a crucial distinction because, and this is something that a lot of our clients face as well, right? When you're changing, your partner's going to question you, going to call you out on your mistakes and say like, I thought you said you're better. How come you made this mistake? If you have the wrong paradigm about what it means to better yourself, you're going to get very defensive very fast.
Yeah.
You're going to explain yourself. You're going to justify yourself, which just proves to your partner, ironically, that you haven't really changed because you're still insecure. But if you can really understand this value of working on your process instead, if your partner points out to you and says like, hey, you're still making a mistake, you can lead into that and you can say, hey, it seems like I made a mistake. I mean, you tell me where I made it. And you learn from that and you make this into such a positive experience. And that's really what counts. And so, yeah, that's great. Like, changing all the paradigms of relationships in general, you know?
And to add to that one point, like right there, and when you're able to change that paradigm and look at that as a positive, you know, like you do this all the time, you know, like once I understand that, you know, that you're only pointing these things out because they know you can better yourself, and you don't take it as an attack, and you're not coming off as defensive, and you're able to really lean into it and say, yeah, let's fix that. Right. And then it's so exciting because you're like, man, you know, I'm fortunate enough, you know, that you're sharp enough to point out these areas, you know. And then I think about, like, what if I work for someone who couldn't do that, you know, that couldn't challenge me, right? Yeah, that would be easy. I wouldn't have any issues. They wouldn't say anything, but where would the growth be in that? You know, so when my partner looks at it now and says anything like, hey, maybe not say that, or maybe do this, and I just smile. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. You know, let's do that.
Yeah,
it's really important.
It's great, man. I love this. I know we're kind of almost at the hour now, so I'll just kind of start wrapping things up. I want this to go on forever because this is going into a really good direction. But last piece of advice, Jason, like, again, you know, the unfortunate thing that I have to accept as well is that people unfortunately don't seek help until their situation is very dire. And I think a lot of people are in the same position as you are in, where they're on a brink of things ending. And I know you gave the 4 pieces of advice before, but what's the one takeaway? The one takeaway you would give someone when they're facing this really dire situation, what is it?
You know, anytime I think about me, I always thinking about I chose to bet on myself, right? I chose to bet on myself that I knew that there was something more. And that's why I didn't stick with those other programs, because I knew there was more, and I wanted to achieve higher levels, regardless of whatever happens, regardless of a marriage, regardless of anything else. I just wanted to better myself. And so I had to bet that I can do it. You know, we meet a lot of people with the right motivation in the program, and then we meet some that are not. But I think those that chose to say, hey, look, I was meant to be better than what I am now. You know, I think you'll be, you know, it was probably the biggest thing for me is really just knowing I can do something better than what I'd done in the past.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That was, we went deep there, Jason, I think. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And again, Jason, even though he works for me, like, we're doing this interview out of the genuineness of our heart. Like, we're not doing this to try to sell our program. We have enough money as it is. And this is really for people to really see and understand what the process of growth really should look like. And if you get the process of growth right, what outcomes you start getting naturally as well, and how no matter how hopeless you think things are, there is a way out there, and there's a really good way out there. So Jason, and for people watching this as well, if you ever want to talk to Jason or kind of get his story, just feel free to email me. I'm sure you know my email. If not, it's just Geoffrey@relationshipsmaster.com. I'm going to put the email somewhere in this video. But feel free to email me, and I'll try to get you in touch with Jason, or if he's too busy, I'll figure something out. But I really want his story to seem real to you guys and not seem fake, not seem contrived. I want his story to feel real, because in the community, Jason has really established himself as almost the head honcho here, almost like the beacon of example for a lot of people. And I want that inspiration that he can give to inspire you all as well. But Jason, thanks a lot for taking the time. Yeah, man, let's keep rocking.
Keep it going.